Welcome to the Atheist Witch Podcast, a bi-weekly podcast for witches or any curious minds to learn more about a non-theistic approach to witchcraft. Hello and welcome to episode 23 of the Atheist Witch Podcast, the show where we dive deep into the craft from a non-theistic, science-minded perspective. I'm your host, and today we're tackling a topic that is absolutely foundational to my personal practice and the practice of a lot of other witches out there: meditation and journeying. Today I'm going to cover the history of these practices, break down a few techniques that you can start using right now, and talk about how to integrate deep meditation and journeying, or as some call it, hedge riding, into your totally atheist, perfectly rational witchcraft practice. Included at the end of this episode is a short guided meditation for drawing up your own personal energy. I talk a lot about meditation and related practices like breathing exercises, grounding, centering, and shielding, etc. I thought that today you might like to hear more about how this actually plays out in my life, and I'll offer a quick example of a recent experience. I use meditation and mindful moments as tools both in my daily rhythms and in my ritual work. I find that a daily meditative practice does a lot of good for my mental and emotional well-being, so I try to fit in at least a short practice every day. This can be something as simple as breathwork, or as involved as a journey to seek out some answers, whatever I feel I need most that day. I also rely heavily on meditation during ritual because for me, it's become a reliable way to quickly access my subconscious. I will meditate on card pulls, spell results, or anything else in my practice where I feel that I need some additional guidance. I've been really leaning into meditative journeys lately, especially as we sink into the dark half of the year. I always find it easier to be introspective around Samhain and Yule. So a few weeks ago, I did a shamanic journey with the goal of tackling some of my deep-seated resistance to fully committing to my personal goals. And I went to my mental starting place, I call it the Great Tree, and I made my way to the upper world, and I was seeking some advice from my higher self figure. I call her the woman in white, and I don't believe that this is a literal spirit guide or a deity. I see her more as a archetypal manifestation of my future self or my wisest self. What happened in this journey was surprising, as these things sometimes are. I was given a huge, clear vision of where my self-sabotage was coming from, and the woman in white told me that it was time to let go of my anchors. She smiled, and she told me that I didn't need feet if I could fly. And in that moment, I felt literal wings open up on my back. Now, did I actually grow wings? No, of course not. But that shift in my self-perception, that feeling of liberation and power, came directly from tapping into my subconscious and confronting my mental blocks through that guided imagery. For me, that's more effective than a week of logical self-talk could ever be. And that is the power of this practice. You know, deep down, I still wish that I could believe in the classic image of the witch, tapping into some vast ethereal energy field, speaking to literal spirits, or maybe flying off on a broomstick. I really do. But until I see the evidence, my brain has to keep searching for the rational explanation. And I can tell you, when it comes to meditation and journeying, the science is absolutely fascinating, and it only makes the practice more powerful and more interesting. So let's start with the basics. What even is meditation? It is not just sitting cross-legged and humming, although those are certainly options. At its heart, meditation is simply a practice where an individual uses a technique like mindfulness, focusing the mind on a particular thought, object, or activity, to train attention and awareness and thereby achieve a mentally clear and emotionally calm state. The history of meditation is long and varied, and as far as we can tell, meditative type practices likely date back to prehistoric times, stemming from an ancient contemplative and religious tradition across many cultures. Think about that meditation practiced by Tibetan Buddhist monks. These monks have consciously trained themselves to increase their body temperature in extreme cold by using biofeedback. This type of science is actively demonstrating that conscious thought can influence involuntary bodily functions, which honestly sounds pretty dang magical to me. We can trace formal, structured meditation practices back thousands of years, particularly in Eastern religions. In Hinduism, the root of practices like dhyana, the mental concentration aspect of yoga, date back to at least 1500 BCE, although dhyana itself popped up in the 4th to 2nd century BCE. Dhyana literally means contemplation or meditation and is a rigorous 8-limbed practice designed to merge the self with the ultimate reality. Similarly, in early Buddhist traditions, which began around the 6th century BCE, the goal of practices like vipassana, or insight meditation, and samatha, or calm abiding, is to achieve deep mental clarity and dismantle illusions. These traditions provide a precise, systematic framework for training the mind, which essentially is psychological self-mastery. The point is, humans have been using their brains this way for millennia. The methods are ancient, but the mechanisms are neurological. So this will lead us into what some call shamanic journeying or hedge riding. This is a specific, ancient form of meditative practice. The term shamanism is regarded as one of the world's oldest discovered religions, and it focused on entering a trance-like state to interact with an inner, non-ordinary reality. So the practitioner, the shaman or wise person, would use this deep inner journey to gain knowledge, power, or healing, often on behalf of the community. They were essentially leveraging their own powerful subconscious minds to find creative solutions and profound insights. For the atheist witch, this is where it all clicks. We don't need to posit a spirit world to explain the effect. The other world or the spirit world becomes a vivid, richly symbolic landscape within our own subconscious and conscious minds. When I engage in a journey or a hedge ride, I am deliberately accessing my deep implicit memory and my mind's incredible capacity for imaginative problem solving. The power is within me, using the natural, explainable, or at least eventually explainable mechanism of the human brain. My favorite part of meditation is marveling at the immense capacity for imagination that my brain has. The difference between invocation and evocation is key here. These aren't strictly the occult definitions, but in general, invocation is calling forth an external entity, like a deity. Evocation, on the other hand, in this context, is bringing forth an internal force or an emotion. Journeying and deep meditation are pure, unadulterated evocation, and they're how we tune into our deepest psychological landscape. This is where the science gets really cool. Neuroscientists have used MRI scans to observe what happens in the brain during deep meditation. They found that one key area that is often quieted is the default mode network, or DMN. The DMN is essentially the brain's internal chatterbox. It's responsible for self-referential thoughts, like worrying about the past, planning the future, and generally keeping us stressed out and anchored into our own ego. When the DMN quiets down, we experience that sense of oneness, timelessness, of profound clarity that many equate with spiritual experiences. Look, if magic were real, this is what I imagine it would feel like. That profound sense of connection and clarity. We now know that feeling has a name. It's the quieting of the default mode network. It's the closest thing to magic that our brains can generate, and it is spectacular. For us, it's sort of like the brain just getting out of its own way. Some other fun facts about the DMN and meditation. The DMN includes regions of your brain like the medial prefrontal cortex and the posterior cingulate cortex. The medial prefrontal cortex is heavily involved in assigning personal relevance to thoughts and experiences. By reducing activity in that area, the brain lessens the habitual practice of filtering all experience through the lens of me or mine, which is why it leads to that perceived quieting of the ego and the sense of unity. When we talk about hedge writing, by the way, we are talking about consciously seeking out a liminal state. The hedge was historically the boundary between the cultivated village and the wild, untamed land beyond. So, the hedge rider or witch was one who traveled the boundary, moving between the ordinary material world and the other world of nature and mystery. For the atheist witch, the hedge is the boundary, the transition point between the ordinary conscious world and the non-ordinary subconscious world. It's the psychological state akin to the hypnagogic state that you enter just before falling asleep, where your brain shifts from beta waves, or waking, to alpha and theta waves, which are responsible for deep relaxation and trance-like feelings. It's a natural, documented state of consciousness, and we, as witches, are using these tools of rhythm, focus, and visualization to harness it for our intentional work. Let's talk more about the brain states. When you begin to meditate and the DMN begins to quiet, your brain is shifting from the alert, busy beta wave into an alpha wave state. That's the state of calm, relaxed awareness. But to really journey and to really ride the hedge, you'll actually need to push into theta waves. Theta is the frequency associated with deep meditation, REM sleep, dreams, and profound creativity. This is where the rhythmic tools will come in. Rhythmic drumming at about 4 to 7 beats per second acts as an auditory driver that literally forces your brain to match the beat. This is a process called entrainment. This is another non-magical yet completely reliable physical mechanism that can lead to deep shamanic trance. We are deliberately hacking our own nervous system, and that is so cool. Speaking of deep trance states, we must talk about lucid dreaming. If journeying is consciously inducing a trance, lucid dreaming is consciously taking the reins of your own dream world. A lucid dream is simply a dream during which the dreamer is aware that they are dreaming. This awareness often allows the dreamer to gain some control over the dream characters, narrative, and the environment. Why is this powerful for an atheist witch? Because it is the ultimate evidence-based confirmation that your inner world is a legitimate landscape for magical work. In a lucid dream, you can literally confront your shadow self. You can practice new behaviors. You can fly, which I love to do in my journeys. And you can even rehearse real-life scenarios. Remember that the dream state is one way in which our brain allows us to safely process experiences that might be distressing otherwise. Techniques like the mnemonic induction of lucid dreams, or MILD, where you set the intention to become lucid right before sleep, or reality testing, where you frequently check during the day to see if you're dreaming, are practical, science-based ways to introduce intention and consciousness into your nightly journey into the dream world. To recap on the why, We journey or meditate to bypass the analytical DMN and enter into a theta state, or over the hedge, to consciously assess and reprogram our subconscious mind. So now we have the why, let's talk about how. Meditation practices are generally categorized into two major styles: focused attention and open monitoring. Both styles quiet the DMN, but they do so through different mechanisms and they impact specific parts of the network a little differently. Focused attention, this is samatha that I mentioned earlier. This involves sustaining attention on a single object, like the breath or a mantra, or a visual point like a candle flame, and redirecting the mind back whenever it begins to wander. Focused attention primarily engages brain regions associated with executive control, or the ability to direct your attention. These control regions actively inhibit the DMN when the distraction occurs. So initially, the DMN is suppressed when the meditator is successfully focused, and when the mind begins to wander or the DMN reactivates, the executive control network has to work harder to bring attention back, which will show a pattern of active regulation. So, practicing focused attention meditation strengthens those pathways that allow you to voluntarily shut down internal distraction and sustain focus. On the other hand, open monitoring meditation, or vipassana, is also sometimes called mindfulness. And this style involves non-reactive monitoring of all present experiences, all your thoughts, sounds, sensations, and emotions, without any type of judgment or attachment. This is about awareness rather than about concentration. Open monitoring doesn't really rely on actively fighting the DMN. Instead, it seems to change the DMN's connectivity. The meditator will observe self-referential thoughts, which we know is DMN activity, without seeking to identify with those thoughts. For me, open monitoring meditation often takes the form of sitting on a riverbank, watching all of my individual thoughts float by in the river and just letting them go. Open monitoring leads to a more profound and sustained baseline reduction in DMN activity. Specifically, it often reduces the connection between the medial prefrontal cortex, which, as we mentioned, processes self-relevance, and other DMN areas. When the connection weakens, the thoughts generated by the DMN are less likely to be perceived as defining myself or my problem. So open monitoring seems to be most closely associated with the subjective experience of ego dissolution and non-dual awareness, which is the sense of profound clarity that we've mentioned before, because it fundamentally alters how the DMN processes information. Okay, so we've talked about a couple different types of practice, and now you'll need a method to quiet your mind and begin to enter those deep receptive states. So this is where some of the breathwork and meditation technique begin to come in. So one simple and incredibly effective technique that we've talked about on this podcast before is 4-7-8 breathing. You will exhale all the air from your lungs, breathe in quietly for a count of 4, hold for a count of 7, and then exhale for a count of 8. And the rhythmic process of this type of breathing will calm down your nervous system and prime your mind for deeper work. Another technique that we've talked about many times is grounding and centering. This is a practice that I use almost every day, and my version involves visualizing a stream of golden light entering my body from the earth and a pure white light entering my body from the sky. And I will let these energies meet in my center and swirl until I will exhale and push the light out into a soft glowing aura all around me. This intentional visualization is a physical and psychological act of establishing stability and focus before any spellwork, ritual, or journey. So beyond the foundational techniques for getting into the receptive state, let's look at a couple more that are pretty useful. The first is the body scan, which is a type of mindfulness for your physical self. The body scan forms a core part of programs like mindfulness-based stress reduction, or MBSR, and it is pure body awareness. You lie down and systematically bring your entire attention, limb by limb, joint by joint, through your whole body. You're not trying to change anything, you're just observing the sensations. Tingling, warmth, pressure. For us, this is a fantastic tool for energy work. If you want to raise power or prepare for a spell, a body scan can help you locate tension to be released and consciously feel your physical self as a vessel for focused intention and energy, and grounds you into your biological reality. Another technique that's useful is the loving kindness meditation, or witchcraft as radical empathy. This comes from a Buddhist tradition, and its effects are purely psychological and ethical. You'll just repeat phrases to yourself. May I be safe. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I live with ease. And then you'll extend those feelings out from yourself to loved ones, to random neutral people, and then finally to people that might be more challenging or more difficult. The practice directly strengthens your capacity for empathy, the very thing that makes us ethical humans. It taps into power of our mirror neurons to consciously cultivate compassion, even towards people that we wouldn't ordinarily feel compassionate about. And as atheist witches, practicing loving kindness is a form of intentional self-improvement. It's how we cast spells for community well-being, one thought at a time. Now, let's talk honestly about the reality of meditation. If you sit down for 10 minutes and feel like your brain is a runaway train, congratulations, you are normal. Some would call that the monkey mind, and everyone experiences it. And the most common reason people quit meditation is because they feel like they're failing by thinking. Here is the secret to success. Meditation is not about achieving a blank mind. In focused attention, for example, it's about recognizing when your attention has wandered and gently, without any judgment, bringing it back to your focus object, whether that's your breath, the sound of the drum, your journey, or that candle flame. Every time you notice the thought and return to the breath, you're strengthening that neural pathway for focus and self-regulation. You're performing neurological resistance training. So if you return to that focus point 100 times in 5 minutes, then truly you actually just had a really successful session. Drop the guilt and remember that the intention here is the magic. Before we dive into journey work, let me give you some tips on the literal physical setting. The physical setting for your work is crucial because it actually helps to communicate to your subconscious mind that it's time to shift gears and settle into that meditative state for a journey. So think about your body positioning. A lot of people think of the lotus pose, right? But while that's great, it is not required, and for journeying, you want to be very deeply relaxed. So for myself, I like to lie down. But if you tend to fall asleep, you could try sitting up in a comfortable chair and make sure that your back is fully supported. The key is to find a position that you can maintain comfortably without fidgeting. If you choose to sit up cross-legged, make sure to use cushions and elevate your hips above your knees to keep your spine straight and avoid physical distraction. And for a standard mindfulness meditation, a sturdy seated position is best. That symbolizes alertness and readiness. Thinking about sound, for deep journey work, drumming is the gold standard. Repetitive, rhythmic sound, usually a steady drum beat, as I mentioned, between 4 to 7 beats per second, has been scientifically shown to entrain the brain into those theta waves, or the trance state. If drumming isn't your thing, you could try nature sounds or binaural beats, which will use different tones in each ear to simulate trance, which of course works best with headphones. Silence is a powerful tool for mindfulness, but rhythm is the fast track for journeying. And of course, we always talk about how powerful scent is as an anchor to memory and focus. So I highly recommend finding a specific scent that you use only for your meditation or journey work. I like incense like sandalwood or frankincense. You could use essential oils with lavender for calm or rosemary for clarity and memory. Both of those are great. And when your brain associates that specific smell with your meditative state, smelling it can help drop you into your trance a lot faster. And this is just the pure neurological conditioning that we always apply to our witchcraft. Now let's talk about a typical, maybe formalized structure that you could use for journeying in actual practice. First, I encourage you to set an intention. Instead of vaguely seeking spiritual guidance, ask for a specific internal question related to a problem or a block that you might be facing. For example, you could ask, what subconscious fear is preventing me from pursuing my goals? And then in your mind's eye, you'll want to pick a starting point. Be imaginative, whatever resonates the most with you. It could be a secluded meadow, or for me, it's the foot of the great tree. This is the beginning of your personal inner landscape. And if you pick a consistent starting point each time, it gives you a psychological anchor that can tell your brain it's time to journey or it's time to go deep. Once you've placed yourself in your starting location, you can begin on the path. You'll immerse yourself in this evocation by imagining each of the details. Go through all of your senses. Think of the scent. Is it pine and moss or salt air? The feeling of the wind on your skin, the sound of the wind or the stream rushing by. And the more vivid you can make this, the deeper you will access your subconscious mind. And then you'll begin to travel. Maybe you see a door somewhere, or you get into a boat, or you start walking. And in the inner world, you may encounter figures, usually archetypes, right? So you're going to maybe meet the maiden, the crone, the mother, an animal guide, your future self, like my woman in white. Treat them not like external spirits, but they are powerful archetypes and personifications of your own inner wisdom, fears, and aspirations. They are the symbolic language of your subconscious trying to communicate with your conscious mind. Listen and record every moment for yourself. The messages that you'll receive are often symbolic and can be felt rather than spoken. When you've concluded your journey, immediately write down your experiences, feelings, and any symbols that arose in your journey. The practice of journaling your dream work and your journeys is crucial for discernment later on. It allows your rational mind to find those psychological truths hidden within the symbols that you experienced. You don't need to believe in magic for a shamanic journey or a hedge ride to work. You just need to suspend your disbelief long enough to let your brain access its own capabilities. So to give you a real starting point, here are a few specific meditation and journey prompts that you can use to integrate this into your practice. You could try a journey for shadow work. Your intention could be, show me the part of myself that I am most resistant to accepting. In this journey, you could travel to the underworld, which represents your inner deep mind, and seek out a hidden cave. What object or figure is waiting for you in the cave? This will tap into Jungian concepts of the shadow self, which is what we do during all shadow work. You could try a problem-solving journey. The intention for this one could be, what is the next logical step to overcome X obstacle? In this one, you could journey to the upper world and find your wisest self or your higher self archetype there waiting for you, and ask them what the next logical step is. Look for symbols, and when you analyze this journey later, look up the psychological meaning of those symbols. Another example journey you could take is boundary setting. The intention here could be to create a psychic and emotional boundary that protects my peace. And in this one, you could mentally journey to a big, vast, open place, visualize yourself right at the center, and then use your imagination and your mental energy to grow a thick, impenetrable hedge or wall around yourself. What does it look like? What does it smell like, feel like? And you can repeat this every day until you feel that boundary and you feel that sense of security and safety in your waking life. Remember that the goal of the exercises is to use the intense focus and symbolic language of that trance state to basically reprogram your own implicit memory. When you come back, the rational mind will take over and use the emotional truth and symbolic insight gained during the journey to inform your real-world actions. Meditation and journeying are not passive exercises. They are some of the most profound and active forms of inner work that an atheist witch could engage in. They're powerful tools for clarity, emotional regulation, shifting subconscious memories, and deliberately rewriting the neural pathways that you want to build. They are the ultimate embodiment of realizing that you are the source of your own magic. That's it for today's episode. Stay tuned after the close of the episode for a short example guided meditation. Join me again in a couple of weeks where we'll dive into another fascinating and practical topic, solitary versus community witchcraft, and we'll explore how to connect with others and maintain our unique path at the same time. Until then, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep making your own magic. Now, let's put all these pieces together with a brief, guided energy channel journey designed to ground you and charge your focus. You can use this before any spell or intentional work. Check your positioning. Close your eyes. Settle into your space. Take a deep, slow breath. Inhale, 3, 2, 1. Hold, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We'll do that a few more times. Inhale, 3, 2, 1. Hold, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale, 3, 2, 1. Hold, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale, 3, 2, 1. Hold, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good. Now, imagine that you are connected to the earth beneath you, sinking deep down through the floor, through the soil, through the bedrock. Feel the pull of gravity. It makes you stable, present, rooted to the earth. Next, imagine a pure, radiant light coming from the vast, empty sky above you. Let it pour down, entering through the top of your head, flowing through you like clear, cool water. Let the earth energy rise up and the sky energy flow down. It meets and mingles in the center of your chest, right where your heart beats, let these two forces swirl together, forming a dense, warm ball of golden light. And as you inhale, the light expands. Feel it grow brighter and more stable with every slow breath. Now you will direct that focused golden energy. Push it gently down your arms, into your hands. Feel it tingle, the heat building in your palms. Push it down your legs. Feel it in your toes, bases of your feet. And with the slow exhales, push that energy all around your body until it surrounds you like a glowing aura. This is your pure, focused power, directed by your own will, and it is now ready for you to use. Hold the feeling for 3 deep breaths. Now, when you're ready, you can gently wiggle your fingers and toes, open your eyes, and bring that energy and that grounded, focused feeling back with you. That is one way that you can intentionally shift your own physical state to prepare for focused work. It's effective, and it's entirely self-contained. You can do that whenever you want to.